Imagine a prison with no walls, no iron bars, and no armed guards. The heavy steel gates are wide open, and the path to the outside world is completely clear. You are told that you are entirely free to leave whenever you wish. Yet no one walks out. Instead, the inmates are running on treadmills until their lungs burn, constantly upgrading their tiny cells, measuring their own heart rates, and anxiously whispering to themselves in the dark, "I have to do more. I have to be better." This is not a dystopian fiction. This is the exact architecture of our modern lives. We have successfully abolished the cruel bosses and the oppressive rulers of the past, only to replace them with a far more ruthless dictator, ourselves. For centuries, human beings lived in what we could call a disciplinary society. The boundaries were clear. There was an external force, a king, a factory owner, an institution, that stood above you and said you must. The rules were absolute, and the exploitation was visible. When the factory whistle blew at the end of the day, you dropped your tools and went home. The oppression remained at the workplace. You were physically exhausted, but your mind was yours. Your time, once you crossed the threshold of your home, belonged to you. Today, that visible enemy is gone. We live in an era that philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the Achievement Society. The rigid, commanding voice of "you must" has been entirely replaced by the seductive, intoxicating whisper of "you can." We are told that there are no limits, that we can be anything, achieve anything, and conquer any obstacle if we just work hard enough. It sounds like the ultimate liberation, but this boundless positivity is, in fact, a brilliant and devastating trap. Because there is no longer an external boss forcing us to labor. We have internalized the master. You have become both the tyrant wielding the whip and the exhausted laborer taking the blows. And the most insidious part of this dynamic is that it does not feel like slavery. It masquerades as freedom. When you work late into the night, when you sacrifice your sleep to finish a project, when you spend your weekends strategizing your next career move, you do not feel like a prisoner. You feel like an ambitious individual maximizing your potential. You are voluntarily exploiting yourself, and you are doing it with a smile. This self-exploitation is uniquely destructive. You can rebel against an unjust boss. You can organize, you can protest, you can walk away from an external oppressor. But how do you rebel against yourself? How do you strike against your own ego? You cannot. And so, the machine runs continuously. Think about the violence of modern positivity. Everywhere we look, we are bombarded with motivational slogans. Nothing is impossible. Just do it. Be the best version of yourself. While these sound encouraging, they carry a dark psychological weight. If nothing is impossible, and if success is entirely in your hands, then what happens when you fail? What happens when you are simply too tired to keep climbing? In the disciplinary society, if you failed, you could blame the system. You could blame the rigid rules or the unfair boss. But in the achievement society, if you fall short, there is only one person to blame: you. This creates a pervasive, suffocating sense of guilt. It is a guilt that follows us into our beds, turning our sleep into a restless tossing and turning. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to simply do nothing? Imagine sitting on a couch on a Sunday afternoon, staring out the window for 2 hours without a screen, without a book, without a podcast playing in the background. For most of us, this idea is terrifying. Within minutes, a dark cloud of anxiety descends. a voice in your head starts listing everything you could be doing. I should be answering emails. I should be at the gym. I should be learning a new skill. I am falling behind. We have lost the ability to rest without feeling guilty, because our minds have been conditioned to view every unpaid, unoptimized second as a moral failure. Even our leisure has been colonized by the demand for achievement. We don't just exercise to feel good. We track our calories, monitor our steps, and upload our routes to digital platforms to prove our performance. We don't just read, we speed read to consume more information faster. We turn our hobbies into side hustles. We are terrified of being unproductive. Consider the allegory of a man who decides to climb a magnificent mountain. In the past, a traveler might climb to feel the wind, to see the vast horizon, and to experience the sublime scale of the world. But our modern climber does not look at the horizon. His eyes are glued to a smartwatch. He is tracking his elevation, his heart rate, and his pace. When he reaches the peak, he doesn't sit in awe of the landscape. He takes a photo, uploads it, checks his metrics, and immediately begins thinking about a higher mountain he can conquer next week. He conquered the mountain, but he never actually experienced it. He reduced a profound encounter with nature into a data point on a spreadsheet. This constant optimization leads us straight into the defining sickness of our time: burnout. Burnout is not simply physical exhaustion. When a farmer works the fields all day, he experiences physical exhaustion. His muscles ache, but his mind is at peace and his sleep is deep and restorative. Burnout, on the other hand, is an exhaustion of the soul. It is the collapse of a psyche that has been stretched too thin by the endless demand to perform. It is the moment the internal battery doesn't just drain, but catches fire and melts. When you are burned out, sleep does not refresh you. A vacation does not heal you, because the exhaustion is existential. It is the heavy, suffocating realization that the finish line you have been running toward does not exist. To cope with this overwhelming demand, we have fragmented our minds. We live in a state of continuous, nervous hyper-attention. We scroll through infinite feeds. We watch videos at double speed. We keep 10 browser tabs open, and we text while eating. We call this multitasking, and we wear it as a badge of honor, a sign of our modern efficiency. But Byung-Chul Han points out a sobering reality. Multitasking is not a sign of civilizational progress. It is a regression. In the wild, an animal must multitask to survive. A deer eating grass must simultaneously chew, listen for the snap of a twig, watch the tree line for predators, and keep an eye on its young. Its attention is fractured because it is in constant danger. Multitasking is the cognitive state of prey. By fracturing our attention, we are not evolving. We are returning to a state of primitive anxiety. What we have sacrificed in the name of this nervous efficiency is the capacity for deep boredom. Not the frustrating boredom of waiting for a bus, but the profound, quiet stillness where the mind is completely untethered from external stimuli. It is only in the space of deep boredom that true creativity, deep contemplation, and genuine philosophical thought can occur. When you constantly feed the mind with micro-distractions, it never has the chance to wander, to reflect, or to encounter itself. We are drowning in a sea of information, yet we are starving for wisdom. So, how do we escape this invisible prison? How do we free ourselves from a dictatorship where we are both the master and the slave? The answer does not lie in working harder, optimizing our schedules better, or downloading another productivity app. The way out is an act of radical rebellion. And in the Achievement Society, the most rebellious thing you can do is to stop. You must develop the courage to be useless, to reclaim your right to be unproductive. You must recognize that your value as a human being is not measured by your output, your metrics, or your capacity to perform. The world will constantly demand that you turn yourself into a project, a brand, an optimized machine. You must decline the invitation. Imagine walking into a forest and demanding that an ancient oak tree justify its existence by showing you its quarterly growth metrics. It sounds absurd. The tree simply is. It exists in its own time, growing silently, weathering the storms, dropping its leaves in the autumn, and standing still in the winter. It does not perform. It just lives. You are part of that same nature. The next time you feel the whip of that internal guard, the next time the anxiety of falling behind creeps into your chest on a quiet evening, recognize it for what it is, the echo of an invisible prison. You do not have to obey it. You can simply lay down your tools. You can sit by a window and watch the dust dance in the sunlight, knowing that in this exact moment, you are doing nothing, achieving nothing, producing nothing, and that is perfectly fine. You do not need to constantly build yourself. You are allowed to just be. The heavy steel gates of the prison have always been open. You just need to stop running on the treadmill, step off, and walk out into the quiet. Take a breath, reclaim your time, and as always, look ever far.